Ahead on Face the State, the race to lead the largest city in Ohio. We're sitting down with the two major candidates for Columbus mayor just 9 days ahead of the November 7th election. Currently serving his second term, Mayor Andrew Ginther hopes voters will keep him in office for 4 more years. He's being challenged by Joe Motil, who retired from the construction industry after a 40-year career, has run for Columbus City Council and state representative, as well as worked on citizen-driven ballot initiatives. Today, hear their visions for the city of Columbus. Plus, many voters have already cast early and absentee ballots, how the numbers are adding up, and what you need to know if you still need to vote. Thanks for joining us this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. We are just over 1 week from the election, so this week we are focusing on getting you, the voter, prepared. Later in the show, we'll talk with Secretary of State Frank LaRose about what you need to know to make sure your vote counts. First, though, one of the big races on the ballot for voters in the city of Columbus. The race for mayor between incumbent Andrew Ginther and challenger Joe Motil. We're asking both candidates the same basic questions to give you the chance to hear their stances on issues including crime, growth, and affordable housing. First up, Mayor Ginther. I started by asking him why he believes voters should re-elect him for a 3rd term.
Well, this is an exciting and dynamic time in our city's history. We've got the fastest growing economy in the Midwest. We've added 27,000 jobs over the last 8 years, working closely with the private sector, institutions like Ohio State and Columbus State to help create the workforce of the future. We have unprecedented investments taking place in housing. In 2 successive ballot issues, we've been able to secure $250 million to put towards affordable housing because we know that's a huge issue moving forward. And obviously, the work we're doing in safety. We think this comprehensive approach with prevention, intervention, and enforcement is critical. We know we need to continue to invest there, continue to add more officers to the street, particularly as our city gets larger, and all work together to deal with the real crisis of gun violence in this city and cities across the country.
And we'll talk more about that in just a minute, too. But also, maybe it falls right in line with that. But what is your top priority if you're reelected?
Obviously, safety. You know, I think it's really safety, housing, and transit, particularly as our city gets ready to grow faster than we've ever grown before. We think those 3 areas have to be our top priorities. We don't just want to get bigger, we want to get better. And the way we do that is becoming the safest big city in America, a city where everybody that works here is able to afford to live here, and where we have access to transit corridors to connect people to great paid jobs.
And we've reported, speaking of safety, we've reported a lot on violent crime and gun violence recently, some of it involving young people, as you know. And as of early October, the city had recorded 120 homicide investigations. So you've invested in programs and projects to look into this. You've created the Office of Violence Prevention. What can you do going forward, though, as we see this crime continuing in the city?
Well, we actually, when you look at the numbers, saw a 33% reduction in homicides in 2022 versus 2021. This year, the only uptick in the homicide area has been in domestic violence homicides. Last year, we had 6 homicides as a result of domestic violence in the entire year. We're not even through the month of October, and we've already had 22 this year. And so that's certainly a crisis that our Office of Violence Prevention is working with the community on. And we just made an announcement this week for an additional $1 million investment we're going to make with Choices, the only domestic violence shelter here in Franklin County. They'll be able to serve 28 more women of trying to leave domestic violence situations to hopefully prevent those from escalating and resulting in a homicide. But we're going to have to continue to invest in prevention. So that's summer youth employment, after school programming, internships for young people, more effective interventions. And that's what the Office of Violence Prevention is really working on right now. What's working? How can we do more of it? What's not? and let's stop that and move on to other models that are working. But obviously, police classes are a critical piece to that. And by the end of next year, we'll have more officers on the street than ever before in the city's history. And we think that's an important part of our safety plan.
Even after the buyout of a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
So these programs and the money that's being pumped in, how do you measure it? How do you make sure it's working? What do you see?
The bottom line is, are we becoming safer? Are we able to prevent crime from happening in the first place? Are we able to intervene in new and different ways? So we've launched the Columbus Violence Reduction Initiative under the guidance of renowned criminologist David Kennedy at John Jay College, and that is this group violence intervention effort. We've had 2 call-in sessions, so we know that fewer than 500 people in a city of 1 million are committing 50% of the violence in this city. And so these call-in sessions bring these young leaders that are involved in escalating amounts of violence and give them a choice. You can go down a different path, and we will help you with jobs, resources, housing, training, or if you stay on this path, you're on a path for either long-term incarceration or death. And we're going to introduce you to the city, county, and federal prosecutors who are going to put you in jail. It's your choice. And we think what we've seen in these 2 call-in sessions is overwhelming majority of these young people are making the right choice.
I want to transition now. You also mentioned affordable housing,
Yeah.
a huge issue, housing crisis across the country, certainly a challenge here. The city, other organizations are putting in affordable housing developments. That's one way to attack it. But you're also seeing, citywide, people who are struggling now to pay their mortgages, to pay higher rents. On the bigger picture, what can be done to help people afford their homes other than just, putting in new developments?
Well, we have a supply crisis, and you go back to Econ 101, if you have increased demand, as our city continues to grow, in flat supply, it raises everybody's home, the cost of homes, of rents, of everything. So we need to double the number of units coming to market at every price point in this community every year for the next 15 years. There are only about 12,000 units coming to market right now in Central Ohio. Indianapolis is smaller than us, and they have 25,000 units. Austin is a little bit larger, and they have 40,000 units. So our job here is to double the number of units in that marketplace, because that'll bring everybody's prices down and make Central Ohio more affordable. And by the way, that's the only way we can avoid what's happened in other high-growth cities around the country, and that is where folks get priced out. I mean, we believe everybody that works in this community should be able to afford to live here too. And the way we do that is rewriting our zoning code. We're rewriting our zoning code for the first time in 70 years. Think about that. Columbus 70 years ago to where we are today.
A little bit different.
A little different, a little bigger. And so we're going to embrace density and height, because we know those are the 2 major contributors to affordability. That's right.
Well, you see a lot of empty office spaces downtown now.
Yeah.
What's the plan to get people to live there?
It's a great opportunity, and we think, what we're seeing, and, under the leadership of Jeff Edwards at the PNC building downtown, what's happening there, we think there's a great opportunity for more mixed-use development and retrofitting some old office buildings into housing. So we're excited about that opportunity.
Finally, Mayor, I guess, broad picture, why should someone move here, stay here, or raise their family in the city of Columbus?
Well, I believe it's because of our people. I always say the sun is always rising in Columbus, and there's always room for one more. I mean, this community is one that is excited about growth, is excited about the future, is committed to innovation and technology and growing our economy. Our goal is to make sure the prosperity that's shared by some is shared by all. We want to make sure that every family in every neighborhood is sharing in our success. And we think there's a great deal of room for everybody in Columbus's future.
Now, Mayor Ginther ran unopposed for his second term back in 2019. That is not the case in 2023. This time around, he faces a challenge from Joe Motil. Up next on Face the State, hear Mr. Motil's vision for the city of Columbus. And later, the votes are already coming in, but the big day is still more than a week away. We'll talk with Secretary of State Frank LaRose about voter interest in this election and what you need to know about casting your ballot. Welcome back to Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. Today we're focusing on the race for Columbus mayor. You heard from Mayor Andrew Ginther. Now it's time to hear from his challenger, Joe Motil. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm asking the candidates the same basic questions to hear their stances on some of the key issues. Now I'd like to welcome Joe Motil in to face the state. Mr. Motil, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome, sir. First of all, just why should voters elect you as mayor?
Well, first of all, I've been a lifelong resident of Columbus for 67 years. I'm one of 11 children, grew up in the Clintonville neighborhood, also lived in the University District for about 15. And I have a very, I would say, diversified background in terms of my work ethic as a blue-collar union worker for Labor's Local 423 and also as a construction safety manager for 14 years, where I worked on projects of $100 million and more. I've been involved with numerous city-sanctioned commissions over the last 40 years and also been involved with just about every city governmental department there is. I currently am the 31-year president of the Friends of Tuttle Park, so I have a very strong background in terms of how Recreation and Parks Departments operates. Also was the zoning chairman on the area commission back in the University District, so I understand development not only from the zoning aspect of it, but also as a construction worker of 40 years. The ins and outs and documents and so forth, and everything that takes place on a construction site that most people have no idea what goes on.
What is your top priority?
I wouldn't say there is a exact top priority. We have numerous priorities. Some of my top priorities are affordable housing, crime and safety, infrastructure, transit and mobility, addressing the homelessness, taking care of our seniors, reinvesting in our neighborhoods finally because of the lack of disinvestment, the disinvestment that's been taking place for literally decades in our neighborhoods. Those are the priorities that need to be addressed. In every election year, you hear the same promises and campaign rhetoric from our mayor that it's always about the people and about the neighborhoods and about opportunity. But as soon as November's over, it's back to usual. It's taking care of the developers, it's taking care of the rich and powerful of this city, and not reinvesting into our neighborhoods. Just yesterday, I had a press conference on Cleveland Avenue, and I asked people to look at Cleveland Avenue from 11th Avenue to Weber Road. And the deplorable condition of that street that I noticed back in June when I marched in the Juneteenth march down Cleveland Avenue. There is at least 20 missing light poles. There are tree wells that are empty of trees. There are weeds growing up as high as 2 feet high in between the curb and the sidewalk. And we can't even maintain our neighborhoods, let alone improve them. So how do we expect our current mayor to do the same?
We've reported a lot on violent crime here in the city of Columbus. Some of it recently, some of it involving young people. As of early October, the city had reported or recorded 120 homicide investigations. How would you attack the crime problem in the city of Columbus?
Actually, that number is up to 129, and we are on track to reaching at least the third highest number of homicides in our city. And the buying out police officers' contracts at $20 million plus $2 million for deputy chiefs really put, I think, a dent into our police force and really hurt the safety in our neighborhoods and such. That was a mistake. That took out 100 police officers who had a lot of knowledge and experience on the police force. And also, we spent $20 million on youth programs over the city. What were the results of that? There were still cars being stolen. There was still youth crime taking place in our neighborhoods. We need to invest back into our neighborhoods again and our young people's lives. Having been involved, like I said, with Recs and Parks for 31 years, the city of Columbus has slashed and burned that budget for decades. I have witnessed it firsthand. And now they're trying to, put money back into it, but it's a little bit too late. What has happened in some of these neighborhoods? It's been generational poverty and things of that nature. A lot of these young youth have actually watched their own parents suffer from, problems and issues and not getting ahead, and they feel like they have no chance at all as well. We need to create things like, we do need youth programs, but we also need programs that are means tested. We also need to make sure that we know these programs are working and not just throw money across the table and say, here, now it's up to you to take care of it. But we have to support our police force as well.
I'd say, would you put more officers on the streets? How would you approach the police department?
Well, we absolutely have to. And I also, about 3 decades ago, I aspired to become a police officer. I took the police exam, and I have the utmost respect for the police. I have met with the FOP leadership as well to discuss what their concerns were and what my concerns are. I will hold the police department accountable for anything that takes place in the police department, just as I have held city officials accountable for corruption and what have you. But we have to work together, and that's the key to the problem. We have to get the community to feel safer with our police as well.
You talk about revitalization on Cleveland Avenue and things. Let's talk about affordable housing here.
Sure.
That is one of the key issues. We're seeing a crisis across the country, challenges in the city. How would you approach making sure that there's enough affordable housing for folks to live and work in Columbus?
One of the things that I proposed 2 years ago when our American Rescue Plan dollars were given by the federal government was that the city and county both allocate $60 million each of their American Rescue Plan dollars. I also approached the Columbus Partnership in that same letter and said I would like for them to match that $60 million. That would have created $180 million towards affordable housing for people making $40 million and less, and they could have built at least
$40,000
and less. Correct.
You said $40 million. I just wanted to make sure
Oh,
you
I'm
had
sorry.
the
Thank
right
you.
numbers.
Yeah, $40,000 and less, 60% AMI, and that would have created at least 5,000 units. They squandered a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do that. The county has only spent roughly $20 to $25 million of their ARP funds. The city has not spent one single dime to spend one single unit. I've also proposed that the city, that we allocate more than 8.43% of our hotel motel tax that goes towards affordable housing to 25%. I've also proposed an empty homes tax, which is actually an excise tax.
So you're not talking about raising the hotel tax, you're just talking about the allocation of where that money goes.
That's correct, the allocation of those funds. Correct. And so also I've proposed an empty homes tax, which is an excise tax on vacant buildings there's thousands of them throughout our neighborhoods, to get these absentee landlords to get those houses on the market as an incentive. If they don't, they get taxed. That money goes towards an affordable housing trust fund.
We have just less than a minute left right now. I want to ask you, you've said you've been here 67 years. Why should someone move here, stay here, or raise a family here?
Well, I've stayed here because I love Columbus. I always have. Much of my family still lives here. I've raised my 2 children here. I've got an 11-year-old grandson that I'm hoping will also enjoy the city and stay here. But we need to make improvements for everybody. We cannot, 8 out of the 10 jobs in the city of Columbus cannot afford a 2-bedroom apartment. We need to make sure there's opportunity for everyone. And we just don't say this at election time either. We actually have to take care of things. I am running as the mayor of the people. I have been working with the people of Columbus and will continue to do that. I am not beholden to the rich and powerful of this city. We need somebody who's independent of that, who can actually be a leader and not be led by those people.
Well, important races and big issues are on the ballot. Did you already vote early or send in an absentee ballot? We'll talk with Secretary of State Frank LaRose about how those are adding up, voting security, and what you need to know ahead of November 7th if you haven't voted yet. That's next. Election day may not be for another 9 days, but the election has actually been underway for about 2 weeks. A lot of votes have already been cast, but not yet counted. Early and absentee voting started on October 11th. By my math, based on the Secretary of State's office's daily absentee report counts, as of October 24th, nearly 200,000 people had already voted early in person, and nearly 110,000 had voted by absentee ballot. See, 108,512. Early and absentee voting run through Sunday, November 5th. Then on Election Day, November 7th, polls will be open from 6:30 in the morning until 7:30 at night. Also, if not returned by mail, you have to get your absentee ballot to your Board of Elections by the time polls close Election Day. Helping us prep you for the November 7th election today is Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose. Mr. LaRose, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. We're excited. Election day is right around the corner, but as you mentioned, early voting is already well underway, and there's still time to request an absentee ballot, but you got to get it mailed in by Monday.
Monday's the last day to request it?
To request an absentee ballot, yeah.
All right. So what do those early voting numbers say to you? You got almost 300,000 people.
Well, it tells me that Ohioans continue to trust the process of early voting. They know that it's a secure and a convenient way to vote. Listen, Ohio's had this long trend over the 5 years I've been in this office of seeing strong participation. We had a record-breaking election in 2020, again in 2022. Even last August, when we had a special election, just as I predicted, there was strong turnout for that. Ohioans are engaged, and they know how important it is, and they show up to vote, whether they take advantage of early voting, absentee voting, or election day.
Are those
voting.
early voting numbers higher, lower compared to past elections?
I think they were about as we expected, but I'll say this. It's very localized in an election like this. Of course, there's two statewide issues that are driving a lot of attention and excitement among voters on both sides, but it comes down to maybe in your town there's a really exciting mayor's race or a school levy or a school district race, and that drives turnout at a very localized level. In some communities, maybe you don't have such an exciting mayor's race, and so fewer people are turning out there.
A lot of people, of course, will show up November 7th. Do you still need poll workers?
We do in some counties. And, it's no surprise that we need Republican poll workers in urban counties. We need Democratic poll workers in rural counties. We've really leaned into this over the 5 years I've been in the office and launched these different recruiting programs. We have 17-year-old high school students that we call Youth at the Booth. I've been reaching out to my fellow military veterans, asking them to answer a second call to duty by signing up to be a poll worker. And we tell the boards that they really need to recruit 115%, so they have that reserve force trained and ready to go in case somebody calls off. VoteOhio.gov is the place to sign up.
So, it could be busy on November 7th, so you need those workers. What are you anticipating overall for voter turnout?
We're anticipating a high number. I don't predict a specific number, but we're always ready.
Right?
We always want 100%, and we're never going to rest until we get to that. But we're going to see high turnout. Ohioans turn out to vote because they know it's convenient and they know it really makes a difference, especially with two statewide issues on the ballot.
We have a graphic to show also. Something new this year is that voters do have to bring a valid photo ID to their polling place. Here is a list of the valid IDs. Those include an Ohio driver's license, U.S. passport, U.S. military ID card, a Veterans Affairs ID card, and the others that you're seeing on these two graphics. So, Secretary LaRose, why did the legislature enact this at the end of last year, going forward for this year, to have a valid ID?
Well, this is something that Ohioans on both sides of the aisle had been interested in getting done for a long time. They want to make sure that when a voter shows up that they are who they say they are. And the good news is this: for the vast majority of us, it doesn't change anything. Historically, 98% of voters already come with a state ID or a driver's license. There was that small percentage that previously took advantage of what they called the alternative forms of ID, like a pay stub or a utility bill. Those are gone now. You've got to have a photo ID. But the good news is this: you've got the chance still to go and get a free ID at any BMV if you don't have one, so there's no cost for that. And even if you show up on Election Day without one, the dog ate it or you lost it or whatever else, even then you're not left out of the process. You're given what's called a provisional ballot, goes in a separate envelope. It's not counted on election night, but it will be counted as part of the final official tally 3 weeks later, as long as you come in and prove your identity in the few days after the election.
Voters want to make sure and know that their votes are going to count, they're secure and everything. What is Ohio doing to make sure that the counting process, the voting process is secure, then every vote's going to count?
This is one of those areas where we absolutely lead the nation. I testified in front of the Pennsylvania State Senate last year and last month for that matter. I've done it a couple times because they want to know, how is it Ohio continues to shine when they've had some struggles? And it starts with the bipartisan oversight of the process. In a time where it feels like in Washington, Republicans and Democrats can't agree that today's Sunday, at your Board of Elections, they're working together in a really cohesive bipartisan way to run elections. It comes down to maintaining accurate voter rolls. I don't apologize for taking dead people off the voter rolls and those who move out of state. It comes down to the fact that we always have paper for every ballot. And so, yes, we tabulate the results on election night using a machine because we want to have those results before we go to bed. But then 3 weeks later, we count the hard copy paper, compare it to the electronic results side by side. That redundancy is in and of itself a security procedure. And by the way, we've had a 99.9% accuracy rate throughout the time that I've been serving in this office.
And again, I think people might be curious about what happens with absentee ballots and those early voting ballots. Where do those go? They're not counted yet, right?
No, but they're processed and ready to count. And this is one of the differences why other states have continued to mess this up and not be able to release those unofficial results on election night, but we give them to you before you go to bed on election night, is that we process them as soon as they come in. That means we check the ID. A Republican and a Democrat sit there and verify that the name, the date of birth, the address is all correct. We flatten the thing out so it's ready to go through the scanner. And when the polls close at 7:30 on election night, the very first ballots counted are those absentee ballots and those early ballots, because they're already ready to go. When you see results at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, those are almost all those early votes and absentee votes. The election day votes really don't get counted until a little bit later, 9:30, 10 o'clock in the evening.
Well, Mr. LaRose, thank you for helping us get our viewers and voters ready for the big election this time?
It's so important. VoteOhio.gov for all the information. Sign up to be a poll worker, what IDs you need, and where your polling location is. All that's at our website, VoteOhio.gov.
All right, thank you, sir. We all have it. We have it also very conveniently, too. For a breakdown of the issues and your voting guide, just text the word VOTE to 614-460-3345. We'll send the information right to your phone. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. I'll see you back here next Sunday morning at 11:30.